and welcome to the CBB Supershow, brought to you by the FTN Network. This is the Selection Sunday Watch Party. We are going to be doing a bunch of fun things today. I, of course, am your host, Walter Waddell, a.k.a. Dub Deuces 85. I've got the TV streaming over here, just finished watching the Wisconsin game. Got another one over here that'll have the actual selection show on it. Basically, what's going to happen throughout this show is, and there's a lot planned on FTN, so we're going to be on a kind of a tight timeline. We're going to be on for about an hour after the show and the bracket are revealed. We're going to have to hop off. On the same network here, Mike Randall, our chief content officer and betting aficionado, will be having his instant bracket analysis show, and then he and Mike Cutry will also be going live in 2 hours after. So you'll definitely want to jump from the Super Show to the betting show to their bracket talk, and that is going to be a private one. This is obviously public. The next one will be public, and then for FTN subs, the Mike Cutry show will be behind the paywall, but if you're a sub, you definitely don't want to miss that. I am going to pop a co-host on here, familiar to you all, my man Razzle is going to be on here in just a moment. We're going to be chopping it up, talking about all things college basketball, and also anyone that is in the live chat there talking with us. If you have questions, comments, concerns, you want to hop on and give an instant take on anything, feel free to reach out and we will do so. This is basically just going to be us hanging out, talking hoops, chopping it up and doing our thing. So let's get Razzle on the board here. What is up, Eric? How are you? Appreciate you jumping on here. I know you got your kids around. Mine are like in the neighborhood somewhere. I'm sure they're safe. Glad you're hopping on here. How was your week? And are you excited for the bracket reveal here?
I am glad to be on. Glad the week's kind of over. I mean, the lack of sleep and everything has definitely kicked my butt, but yeah, excited to figure out what's next for all these teams.
Yeah, man. With the way that the stress, like lack of sleep, yes. And as we get older, like, just a couple of years ago, the team no sleep, it didn't really affect me that much, but I'm definitely like walking zombie status as I get older here. Going to be 39 in the summertime, which is crazy. But yeah, the conference tournament week is it's hell because obviously locks, the games are starting with the locks. We don't have starters yet. We've got weird injury news. We've got surprise scratches. It's just, it's such a stressful time. So I'm really excited to be done with that. A lot of crazy variants there. And now we're going to be going into the NIT playing game slates and, of course, the first and second rounds, which is the absolute best. My favorite part of the tournament, Elite Eight, Sweet 16, Final Four, that stuff's all great. And, of course, I enjoy it. But to me, nothing is better than those first two rounds. Buzzer beaters, upsets, brackets busted. I am just super psyched for all of that. And I got a little bit, I've been running kind of cold this week, admittedly, but last night we had that 3-game mid-major slate with Long Beach State and the Lopes Grand Canyon. I was live tweeting that game, and we had a really nice slate, and that just gave us a nice little push there. So we're going to have a lot of those teams, low and mid-majors, on these first and second round slates, and we clearly are going to have a big time edge. And we're going to really, once these slates drop, time and time again, all week, I'll have different guests on. We're going to be looking at it all different angles for GBPs, cash games, large field. If there's the Survivor, we're going to be talking about brackets. We're going to have the RotoWire League. Also at FTN here, we're going to have some draft leagues. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of different things that we're going to do. I'm extremely excited. I'm sure you're going to have stuff that you're doing over there at DFS Army, and we'll collaborate on different things. And you gotta bring it, see if you can win yet another RotoWire championship. You're just too good at this thing, man. At this point, I think we're all playing for second. So I know you're excited to get down there. Tips wise, is it just all about the stacks or what? You just got to keep drafting teams you think you're going to go far, right? Is that how you've been so successful?
I mean, it's that, and let other people make mistakes. Everybody's got biases, right, with the teams that they think they're going to go far. So early on, I think some guys in that draft reach too much rather than take the best available player in the first few rounds. They try to force stacks that, I don't know, that seem less than ideal to me. And maybe that's my bias or personal opinion on certain teams too. But, yeah, I mean, if I can pull out a 4-peat, I don't know, I might have to hang him up after that.
It's been crazy. Yeah, you've fallen into some nice stacks there, and just wherever you're drafting, you've done a nice job. So I'll give it up to you for that. All right, so we're just a few minutes away here from the first part of Selection Sunday. Today was a fun one. We just got done seeing, obviously, Illinois beat Wisconsin there. That was a hell of a game to win the Big Ten. Both teams well deserving. They're going to be fun to watch in the tournament. Earlier today, the Ivy Championship looked like Brown had it locked up. Winners of 7 straight. Unfortunately, just a total collapse and meltdown. Horrible passing. Like last night, Grand Canyon got away with mistakes that Brown did today as well. Long passes, full court, making turnovers, dumb shots, non-defense. Grand Canyon got away from it and got away with it, I should say. Brown did not end up giving up basically a wide open bunny of a layup, and Yale did not miss. So Yale getting into the tournament. I know a lot of people were excited for Yale because it does look like they could be a 12, 13, 14 seed. Brown probably a play-in winner or a 16, 15 seed, something like that. So I know people are excited about that. Obviously, UAB, they just end that Temple Cinderella run, kind of be expected. In Auburn and Bruce Pearl, an absolute dismantling today of Florida. A very scary injury for Micah Hanlogden. That's terrible. Florida is likely not. I mean, I don't know the extent of his injury. I didn't see past that. The video is gruesome. Likely some sort of broken leg, so he's not going to be available for them. Obviously, Florida is going to be using some younger players, lesser used players. Denzel Aberdeen, who we saw today and yesterday, had that career game. Thomas Hoff, who has been playing more minutes on and off. And Alex Condon. That's a terrible way to get it, and I would never celebrate an injury. I'm not, but getting to see Alex Condon in a starting role here in the tournament could be something that we are enjoying and get to see a lot of here as far as they go. Who are some of your, as we're waiting here, who are some of your favorite teams that are in for sure mid-major wise that you think have a chance to maybe make some noise without seeing any pairings yet?
I mean, I obviously like Howard, because we've been cheering for Towns for 26 years now. So he's one of my favorites to finally see, and I actually like that team a little bit. I don't think they're really going to make much noise or anything, but that's all right. It's all about getting some of these teams in that we get to at least use once. So they're one of those teams. Obviously, UAB isn't quite a mid-major, but I'm a big fan of them for fantasy purposes. So, I'm glad they're definitely in the tournament, especially with the way that Gaines and Yaxel are playing, and then obviously Corey Coleman, too. Or Christian Coleman, sorry. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I kind of look at it. Like it's almost like I'm ruined in a way, because when I watch sports now, and still to this day, people, my family knows they don't come in and be like, oh, what team are you rooting for? They're like, what player are we rooting for, Dad? But still, like when you have random people come in, or you're watching out, or you watch something for the first time with someone, and they're like, oh, what team are you cheering for? It's like, we don't root for teams in this house, outside of our home teams or whatever. But yeah, that's the way I look at it with certain teams. Like, oh, the whole Yale versus Brown thing, like Yale's got a better chance to win a game. Sure. But I really wanted the chance to use Keno, Lilly, and Brown, at least for one game or perhaps a play-in game. And just those opportunities to, not only play DFS, but also with the, legalization of sports betting and props and all that stuff across the country, having that opportunity to prop bet certain players. Lilly was awesome today for us in that regard. But I'm really excited about UAB as well. Howard is a good call, getting Seth Townsend in the tournament. They, may not win a game like you said, but I think depending on their matchup, they'll certainly be a squad that gets an opportunity to make some things happen, and DFS wise be very, very, relevant. You'll remember last year in the tournament, they played that first game against Kansas, even though they ended up losing by almost 30 points. They had several players who ended up being relevant and on the optimal there. All right, first bit, the East region being announced now. So we're going to be hanging out here looking at it. Looks like no surprise there. UConn is the number 1 overall seed. And this the first time in history that Stetson has gotten in the tournament, right? So they get rewarded with the number 1 seed there, UConn. UConn and Brooklyn. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, so it looks like I'm 20 seconds ahead of you. So
all right, it's all good. I'm streaming it. That's why. So FAU was an 8 seed, huh? So they were in no danger of not getting into the tournament then. I know there was a lot of talk. Northwestern even. Wow. So there's going to be – what do you think? Do you think like Seton Hall, St. John's, teams like that are like dead in the water or what?
I mean, I think obviously one of them probably will be. I mean, FAU, I can go either way on them. I thought a couple of the other teams that I didn't like that were on the bubble that I thought were below them. So, Oklahoma being one. I know I mentioned it on Rob's tweet earlier today. I can't remember which two I pointed out, but
yeah, he doesn't like FAU. I was fine with them either way too. Like, there's a whole lot of talk about that game last year could have gone either way, right? UConn's got a kind of a hard side here, man. You got your boy Jayden Lede for SDSU playing Yaxel Lenenberg and UAB. Yale gets a 13 seed against Auburn. I love Janai Broom versus Yale. They got the 7-footer Wolf there, but yeah, that's a pretty fun matchup. But it seems like UConn's got a couple of hard teams they could potentially face, but UConn is clearly the best team.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in the San Diego State UAB matchup.
I feel like this is the thing that happens every year, and I've been doing this watch party for a couple of seasons now, and every time we come into it with a team that we're like, man, I just really want to see like McNeese State versus Alabama, and then like they would draw Virginia or something. It's like, damn, they give us these darling teams, and they just set them up to slaughter. Like, not that they couldn't beat Virginia, and I don't think Virginia's getting in, but it's just like a trashy environment for fantasy purposes. Duquesne's getting an 11 here. I'm kind of just backtracking. So Illinois gets Morehead State. Cool. That's a good one. That Morehead State team is pretty fun. And I got to say, like, all these guys who, and I know the portal is something that you and I have kind of been at opposite ends of, but teams in the low to mid majors can work the portal just as well. And Riley Minix, the NAIA superstar that he is, man, he was just phenomenal this year. Gets a chance to go up against the Big Ten champs, Illinois. Be interesting to see what his price is. Is this shirts like Brown had on today, the Brown energy, and then the Cougars got on the Cougars energy? Is that like the trend this year? Like whatever you're having energy?
Yeah, I think that might be it. I'm a fan of that 7-10 matchup here. Should be
yeah. Okay, so Drake gets a 10 seed. Nice. They're in safely. I mean, obviously they're auto bid, but there were some talks about Iowa State pushing for a 1 seed. Now, I don't know how you feel about the Cyclones, but a lot of people in our Discord, like, they're really good at home. We see the conference tournaments like a home setting for them. On the road, neutral, not as good. Do you feel like people are going to be really high on them, picking them far in the tournament, but they could be susceptible, or do you believe that they're a real deal type of team?
I mean, I think they have to be susceptible just because, like, they're not, super polished offensively, right? Like, they're going to be prone to struggles themselves. I know they rely a ton of defense, and yeah, I'm definitely of the belief that they are much worse on the road. So it would be interesting to see kind of how long they can battle. I mean, I think they definitely deserve the 2 seed, so it's not like that's terrible. I think I just really like Illinois in that region now. Other than, I do like Drake over Washington State. Got to ride Tucker DeVries for a little bit.
Yeah, Drake, and you know what? Drake has major experience. Like, this is not a new thing for them to be in the tournament, right? They've had some pretty good outings before. They had that really close game against Miami. That game could have gone really truthfully either way. What was it, a couple of years ago? When they had Yesefu, and they were 11 seed, and they beat, I believe it was Wichita State, and then they got outgunned by USC that year. But they're no stranger to being here in the tournament. A couple of things here, looking at it, UConn, like, they got a pretty tough for being the 1 seed. They got a pretty tough group of teams here that could definitely win at any time. UConn's so deep and so tough, that's going to be really difficult. But Iowa State, even getting that first round matchup against South Dakota State, maybe shades of what was it, 2001, 2002, Hampton beating them as a 15 seed.
Yeah.
Was it Jamal Tinsley? Yeah, I don't know. We have a couple of Iowa fans in our Discord that were bringing that up yesterday, so we'll see. But what are some of you mentioned the Drake Washington State game being something that you like, what are some potential, upsets that you see there, and who initially, what do you think out of the East, who comes out of that region first look?
I mean, like, it's too obvious to say UConn, but like, it just seems, they're just such a strong team. As much as I love San Diego State and Jadon, I think they're susceptible to losing to UAB with the way that UAB's been playing to close out the season. And Drake's going to be, my favorite upset pick, I think, just looking at it right now. I just feel pretty good about them, and Washington State can go cold enough as it is, so give me the experience that Drake has.
Yeah, this man, I just, it's crazy seeing that the how loaded this region is. Like, this is going to be a true test. Like, whoever comes out of it, like, yes, it is obvious to pick UConn, but damn, they're going to be truly battle tested here, because I can see a number of teams coming out. Illinois, like, they're tough. Drake could get hot. FAU, that's probably a pretty brutal match, like, overall run for them. See if they can repeat and do what they did last year. Doubtful. But yeah, this overall region has some really, really amazing teams. Auburn, Jesus, BYU and Washington State have been sneaky. Wouldn't surprise anyone if the Aztecs won. So this will be one that we've got to talk about over and over again. Potential for Auburn to maybe make some noise here. Would be really intrigued to see an eventual Auburn versus UConn matchup with Donovan Clingan taking on Janai Broome. That would be nasty. But yeah, I think, it is, like you said, too easy. I just can't pick against UConn. Like, literally the day after the tournament, ended last year, it was like, this team's championship window is going to be open for quite some time. They are going to be able to recruit well. They're grabbing guys out of the portal. Cam Spencer was an amazing get. And obviously they have a tremendous coach who's now embracing his role as a villain. Everybody loves to see the defending champion lose. But I do think we have a legit dynasty on our hands here. But man, usually those, top seeds get a little bit easier of a run there. And they've got just ridiculous teams here. And you could even say BYU has a chance to maybe win a couple of games there. And that wouldn't be any surprise. In Spokane, that first pod there, no Gonzaga, obviously wasn't going to happen there. But I like that South Dakota State team quite a bit going up against the Cyclones. Now, Houston yesterday, a lot of talk about how that was like the fifth fewest points of a top seed. And I believe the tournament, I saw some stat like that yesterday. You have to really take into account that, they were missing, Juwan Roberts not fully healthy, Joe Tugler out, Damian Dunn got banged up, like, definitely didn't have their top seed there. But this Iowa State team, man, say what you will. And I think that's going to be the thing that people run with, like, away from home, they're not as good. They could lose. Offensively, they looked fantastic yesterday, but they do go through stretches where it's like, where does the offense come from? Tamin Lipsey, quiet. Curtis Jones not hitting shots. Like, there's nowhere for that offense to come from sometimes. And you're talking about a 15 seed with Zeke Mayo, who is fantastic, Luke Apple, who's a sneaky three-point shooter, William Kyle, who is an undersized, front court player, but he can bang with those guys. Charlie Easley, who's been around forever. This is a team that wouldn't shock me to see them possibly pull that out. And I wonder if that's going to gain steam and that'll be like a popular upset. I'm not going to pick it, but it truthfully wouldn't shock me if the Cyclones went cold offensively here. So it's kind of what I'm thinking with the East region there, but absolutely loaded for sure. Yeah. Can you, I don't know if you saw the thing there. Your TV a little bit, could you turn it down just a little bit? It's echoing for myself and others.
I did turn that down, but 1 second here.
Okay, thank you. So brutal for Iowa State to not only get a 1 seed, but not to play in the bracket with the best team. Yeah, that's tough, man. Like, I didn't know if they were going to get a 1 seed just because of everything. Obviously, could have been deserving, could have argued. Obviously, Houston's probably going to get it, right? But yeah, that tells us what, that they were the worst 2 seed in the committee's eyes. Like, that seems pretty strange. So there's Houston. All right, it's coming up on our screens here. There's your Badgers, but Houston getting the 1 seed as expected, playing Longwood. There could have been an argument, I guess, for Iowa State there. I'll be interested to hear how the committee talks and what they say about their decision there. Time and time again, we've seen the committee say, we had this made up on Friday, and they didn't take into account as much those last title games. We'll see. Nebraska as an 8 seed versus Texas A&M. Oh, Wisconsin versus JMU. That's
Yeah,
gonna be a trendy one, but that's exactly the type of matchup that I get mad about, because I would have loved to have seen JMU get like an Alabama, a game that they could win and feel good about. I think Wisconsin, with the way they're playing, I don't know that I can justifiably pick against them. And this JMU team, they get a little bit locked up. They play tight. And I don't know that that's going to be a game that I pick against Wisconsin, honestly. So I know a lot of people will because of the 5-12, but that to me feels like it might be a tough spot for James Madison. With a potential Duke matchup, Badgers are the Duke killers. Vermont. Oh, let's go. Vermont versus Duke. I would have loved to have seen McNeese State there. If McNeese State's name would have popped up there against Duke, I would have honestly absolutely shat myself. Duke losing to a 13 or a 12 seed is a tradition unlike any other. Ooh. NC State doesn't even get a play-in. I was praying for a Grand Canyon there. That was the matchup of all, like going into it. I had a couple of matchups in my head. I would have loved to have. I wanted to see Texas Tech versus Grand Canyon. That was one I really wanted to see and was hopeful for. Kind of surprised about Texas Tech getting that. Because I felt like, when was the last time these two teams played? So back in 2013, Duke they beat Vermont by 1. That'll be a close one. Ooh, okay. So we got Oakland in the tournament as a 14 against Kentucky. Kentucky as a 3 seed. Feels like it might be a little bit high considering how they finish. Florida as a 7. So Colorado gets in. That was a team that I wasn't sure about metrics wise. There was a lot of people talking about Colorado could be a team that we see not get in. There were a few, Providence, St. John, Seton Hall that may have been a little bit more deserving. Indiana State's about to be the highest history of the net, highest net ranking that doesn't get in. I'd be shocked if they did. That's an interesting matchup there. Today, this region isn't nearly as scary as the other one, which is kind of surprising. Marquette getting Kulik back is scary, but I don't know. I think they're susceptible there. That Western Kentucky team, that conference wasn't that scary. There was a few teams in there that I would have preferred to see over Western Kentucky in the Conference USA. This is a fun team, though. They have the fastest tempo in the country. They have several P5 transfers in Brandon Newman, Dante Allen. Who else they got? Christian Lander of Indiana. So that's an interesting matchup there. What's your first take on this South region here? To me, it doesn't seem as I guess scary, but maybe that's the Duke hater in me thinking that they get just an easier region no matter what their seed is.
Yeah, it doesn't seem as scary at all. I am intrigued by that Nebraska Texas A&M first round matchup, fantasy purposes and everything. Then obviously, like, I can't pick either of those teams against Houston, so I don't know. Like, seems like a good spot for Marquette as long as Kulik is healthy. Obviously, going second round against potentially Florida without Hanlogton. Yeah, that region just seems kind of cut and dry overall. Other than I really don't like seeing James Madison against Wisconsin.
Yeah, it seems like the teams that got into this one have like either banged up players, injuries, like question marks. Obviously, Florida, Marquette, Texas Tech's got Darian Williams, who's going to be nursing his injury. Houston's got injury problems. Like, this is just the all injured region. So I like James Madison a lot, but I don't know, man. Maybe you're I would expect you to be a little bit more homerism towards Wisconsin, but I'll do it for you. Just the way that they're playing, the team, the roster that they have, the pieces that they have, the way they defend, how they can get hot offensively. I worry about James Madison stylistically for this one. especially if Wisconsin kind of is able to slow them down. And I realize James Madison, they're 31-3. They've won 13, 14 games in a row. They're phenomenal, but they played extremely tight in that game against Texas State. In the first half of Arkansas State, they were making a lot of mistakes. Arkansas State was just completely overmatched there in the second half. I don't know. I feel like James Madison doesn't play as loose and relaxed as they should be as the underseed there, and Wisconsin is going to end up their business. That's one of those ones where we're going to see a popular upset pick, and then I honestly feel like Wisconsin wins comfortably. And maybe I'm not giving enough respect to James Madison, but I don't know. They have a great team, obviously. Terrence Edwards, TJ Bickerstaff, Noah Friedel, some good pieces there, but I don't know. This Wisconsin team suddenly with a AJ Storr, like, Terry Shannon-esque AJ Storr in the building, seems like they're going to be really in a great position there to make some noise. Upset wise, anyone sticking out to you there? You like the play-in game between Colorado, Boise State? Do you think either of those teams could potentially win a game or two?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always have to consider whoever wins out of the play-in games. That I think we've seen in the past that getting a game under your belt has actually been a good thing, and then coming back to play, right away Thursday or Friday. And I like Colorado's just always live for a W, with KJ Simpson, the way that he's been playing this year. And we know we target guards in March, right? So tough to bet against somebody like KJ Simpson.
Yeah, and obviously Colorado getting in and Northwestern getting in like super comfortably as a 9 seed, which is kind of surprising to me. Boise State, like that spells doom for teams like Seton Hall. Obviously Indiana State's not going to get in. Now I thought St. John's would be a lock just because and they shouldn't use this at all, a legendary coach like Rick Pitino, but now I'm starting to think like St. John's might be totally hosed here because those are a couple of teams that got in that some of the bracketologists did not have as the last 4 in. They were in the next line out, even, or not even the first 4 out. So a little bit scary there for bubble personal teams that are waiting there on the bowl. It's going to be real tough for them. A couple of news items that are coming through here real quick, not related to the tournament, but Chris Mack has accepted the Vanderbilt job. So Chris Mack will be back in action as a coach, getting a big promise for Vanderbilt in their NIL program. Canning Carlisle has hit the portal as well. No shocker there. Interesting bit of news that's come through. Man, I don't like that region. That South looks like it's going to be a bit of a bummer to me. That first, I mean, they came out swinging with that East region, so I feel like every other region is going to be a little bit disappointing compared to that. I do think, and this might be a controversial pick, I'm not as high on Kentucky as everybody else is. I know that they've got the pieces, but they're so young. They do have Antonio Reeves, but if he has a bad game and Trey Mitchell isn't like up to speed here, that Oakland team has a legitimate chance of beating Kentucky. And we know with the way that Kentucky has lacked defensively, if they don't pick up on Oakland and they start letting guys, get hot, and we know Oakland's got we had them for a couple of slates there in the Horizon final. Jack Golke, who looked like he belongs at Duke with his face, was absolutely lighting it up from long range. Blake Lampkin can shoot from 3. DQ Cole is got that FU confidence that he shouldn't have, but he does. And of course, Trey Townsend, who can absolutely be a big problem. The issue there is they don't have a ton of size, right? Townsend playing the 4 and 5 a lot in the Horizon works, but going up against several 7-footers in Kentucky, that might be a problem. Chris Conway is only 6'9", so there's going to be a size disparity there. But if they don't defend and they play their typical fast-paced style against this Oakland team, I think Greg Kampe has a chance there. I'm curious to see what that line is. If we get a large line, I'm going to be definitely taking Oakland there on the spread. Purdue is a 1 seed. Who is going to beat Purdue this year? Montana State versus Grambling State. Little disappointed to not see Coach Jones and Texas Southern get in. So we're going to have a play-in slate with Colorado. Oh, so TCU gets in. I wasn't sure. So they get in comfortably too as a 9 seed. Right. That was a team I thought metrics might have pushed them into like the 10-11 line, but they get in comfortably. And that's a pretty fun matchup against Utah State with great Osabor, Darius Brown. I'm certainly going to be on the side of Utah State. I don't believe in TCU's defense. I think that's going to be a good one. Gonzaga headed to Salt Lake City, where they are a 5 seed. All right, so Gonzaga is all right. Let's go, Raz. This is the first game of the slate. We're out DFS-wise. I'm thinking, let's go. McNeese State, who, obviously has the American gangster, which you can never really pick against Will Wade. 30-3 record here in the Southland Conference. They've won 11 games, which I believe is the third or fourth longest winning streak. They absolutely took care of business in the Southland tournament. They beat the doors off of Lamar. Easy win over Nicholls State. Shahada Wells, who we're familiar with. We know Shahada Wells very well. The conference player of the year, going up against a Gonzaga team with no depth and kind of limped into it. Upset special. We're going to see a lot of picks against Gonzaga. I think popularity-wise, this will be a very, very big one where the public sides with McNeese State. Interesting bit on Will Wade. People have asked him if he would take a job, one of those P5 jobs that have become available, or if he's going to stay at McNeese. It sounds like he'll be staying at McNeese for a couple more seasons, building out a little bit of a dynasty in which he can then take the gig that he wants instead of just taking like a DePaul job, which we know is not unavailable anymore because of Chris Holtman. Kansas as a 4 seed playing Samford. If they don't got Kevin McCullough and Hunter Dickinson, which they'll play, but if they're not 100% healthy, that Samford team fully capable of beating them. All right, this region's shaking out to be some pretty good options here for DFS purposes. I like a lot of these matchups that we're seeing already. Shocked to see Oregon not in the play-in spot. As the 11 seed winning the Pac-12 tournament, obviously took a bit away playing South Carolina. That's an interesting matchup. And Vali Dante versus our guy Colin Murray Boyles. This region has some firepower, man.
It does.
In individual names that we can look at here. Like Akron as a 14 seed. They feel like a dangerous 14 seed to me. Very, veteran team with Ali Ali and Enrique Freeman. Damn, Texas was that safe, huh? Oh, Virginia. Boo! I got to see the Discord real quick. Yeah. There's 3 people in our Discord talking about Virginia boo. Yeah, man, that's rough. That is certain doom for St. John's. I am so upset for Johnny's fans, including myself. Man, that is terrible. That is so disappointing to see Virginia get in. Lame duck play-in / NIT slate with Virginia on it versus Colorado State. I hate it. Hate it. Sound off in the chat. You guys like that? Virginia getting in? That's just that. I mean, that's terrible. That's just terrible. Getting lamed up P5s in. St. Peter's has a 15 against Tennessee. Can they do it again? I'd love to pick Rick Barnes. I think them losing the way they did in the SEC tournament might save me a little bit of money, not picking them to the Final Four. I like this Midwest region. I think just first glance, it wouldn't shock me at all if Samford and McNeese State met in the second round. That would be absolutely amazing. I think Utah State is a very sneaky option to not only take care of business against TCU, but then beating Purdue, assuming Purdue gets past the play-in game winner, of course. But Utah State is a team with Grado Sabor and others that can absolutely deal with Purdue. I like that top half. I can see 3 different teams coming out of that area that are not named Purdue that I like really well in that top half. And if Kansas suddenly gets McCullough shot up with cortisone, Dickinson's shoulders not falling off, they could make a run. It's crazy to see how far they've fallen because of injuries. And then that bottom half there, South Carolina, like them a lot, shakes out pretty well for Tennessee, meeting them possibly against Creighton. But there are teams there that could make a little bit of noise between Akron, maybe that Virginia-Colorado State winner. What's your first thoughts here on the Midwest region?
I think overall, I don't know. I don't feel like it's that strong of a region overall. The biggest thing for me is we get a Ziegler brother matchup in this region. Zakai's younger brother plays for St. Peter's.
That's right. There's a St. Peter's slate, I believe, earlier this year. Might have been earlier this year or last year, but I remember talking about that and Yeah. And that's interesting, man. That's it. What's it? What's his name? Armani or something like that?
Yeah, it's
Yeah. Okay. Man, that is crazy that Virginia gets in. That is like super disappointing. I would not have thought that they were going to get in. I knew Johnny was going to be in the chat here. Zags versus McNeese. Yeah, just an absolute, like, a fantastic. I really wanted Alabama for McNeese. I thought like those two playing against each other would be stylistically phenomenal, and Shahada Wells would become a March hero, but they can do with Gonzaga. Gonzaga has a tough time offensively. Foul issues. McNeese is going to be completely loose. No pressure whatsoever. That's going to what I believe to be a very popular upset pick. I think they're going to do well, which means St. John's and Seton Hall are probably dead. We haven't seen Michigan State yet, right? We haven't seen Oklahoma yet. Oklahoma and Michigan State, I believe, were last four in for Joe Lenardi. And there neither one would be a play-in. Like, how are the Spartans in Oklahoma not a play-in? That's crazy. Has anything surprised you so far? Like, to me, Virginia getting in there as a 10 seed play-in is one of the more surprising developments so far. I do not think they belonged in, but is there anything that sticks out here initially to you where you're like, what?
I mean, it's really that one, and then a couple of the other ones that like were firmly in, right? Getting in at the 9 line, or even FAU at the 8. Those are shocking. Like, I think if you asked me, like, gun to my head, I would have said FAU is worthy of getting in slightly, but definitely not a lock to get in the way that they were seated. So I guess, one way to look at it is, they didn't get pushed down a couple lines to where now they're in a spot to upset a power conference team who, didn't win their conference tournament or whatever, but ended up with like a 7 seed or a 6 seed. So I guess that's a bonus with FAU. But yeah, to me so far, it's just really been that seeding in the 8 to 11 line.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a few teams there again that got in like comfortably, not having to play play-ins, that were a bit shocking. Texas kind of folded there at the end. Maybe thought that they would be, further down than a 7. It almost feels like what we thought was going to happen, or what we knew was going to happen. Like, mid-majors would get shafted, and some of these, on the morphine drip P5 teams that really aren't any bit of exciting, getting prioritized. I knew Indiana State was dead to rights, but I really did not think Virginia would get in, especially them. They're like, we haven't seen Texas A&M yet either, which they should be comfortably in. I don't think we've seen Mississippi State yet either. They should have been comfortably in. Like, I'm
Texas A&M is in.
Oh, that's
they
right.
They were a 9 seed.
That's right. It's Mississippi State that we haven't seen, right? So, man, I just can't get over. They like set the bar so high that UConn region is just like tripping me out when I stare at it. Like, it almost feels like they're the worst 1 seed having that group.
Well, so much for liking Howard or wanting to watch.
Well, I knew they would. I was kind of hoping that they would get a play. Man. Okay, so Wagner. So we at least get them on a play-in slate, right? So Howard versus Wagner. At least we get 2 slates with Howard. That can do that. Howard versus Wagner game. That'll be some fun there in the play-in game. North Carolina, obviously not a great spot. There's Mississippi State as an 8 seed. Okay, thought they were comfortably in.
And there's Michigan State, right
as a 9. Oh, that's gonna set off our Discord. We have some Michigan State haters in the FTN Discord. Jesus, look at those 2 teams, 13 and 14 losses. It's crazy. The Spartans, like, they were always going to get in, but just the fact that they were in no danger of not being in is somewhat controversial to some. I have a Michigan State Final Four ticket that I took out late April last year.
This is an interesting 5-12 matchup.
Oh, okay, yeah. Look at okay, St. Mary's. They're a little bit susceptible stylistically. That one might be a little different, playing in Spokane, so that's good for St. Mary's as the 5. I absolutely adore Grand Canyon. This is one of those matchups that could go either way. Like I was hoping for a faster paced DFS environment, fantasy friendly for Grand Canyon. They get served up to St. Mary's. That's going to be a tough one for me. Because I want to, heart wise, I want to pick Grand Canyon. Head wise, can we actually do that? Because St. Mary's might be a more complete team than people want to admit, myself included. Would have preferred Alabama in that 5 spot against Grand Canyon. That would have been spectacular. Maybe we'll get a second round matchup between the two. Like that's a perfect example right there. Charleston, who I'm fine with, I like them. Matchup against Alabama, that's cool. But if you would have just flopped those two teams and gave Grand Canyon Alabama, I would have been super psyched, way more psyched.
Right.
I hate when they do that. And obviously, we look at the game a little bit different than the committee and others because we're so pre-programmed to think, what can I do with individual players from DFS, prop betting, prize picks, all of that. That could be a fun matchup, Clemson and New Mexico. New Mexico, arguably one of the hotter teams in the country right now. Jamal Mashburn woke up the other night. Jalen House is playing well. Nelly Jr. Joseph has found his stride in Clemson. Maybe, not so exciting to end the season, but that is an interesting matchup as a 6-11. I like this Clemson team. Of course, PJ Hall is my guy. Patriot League staple, Colgate. They have some pieces that we can use if they're cheap. I would not be afraid to use them against this Baylor spot. Dayton just no danger for Dayton. Like no 10 seed, no 11 seed, just in a 7 seed, no danger whatsoever. 7-10 Dayton versus Nevada. Okay, that has some potential there. I almost rather would have seen Dayton versus Utah State there. Minor nitpicking that we have. St. John's is out. Wow. That's just, man, they just left. We're going to be without all these teams are going to decline NIT invites too. See, and I want to, Long Beach State was they're so good for DFS. I guess stylistically, Arizona plays at such a fast pace. Like we'll have some potential for some big scores from those Long Beach players, the Traors, Marcus Deshonis, Husky faithful. This West region has some of the teams that I really excited about. Grand Canyon, Howard. First thoughts here on the West region from you, Ras.
We get some pretty fast teams, and then we obviously get the stylistic differences, like with St. Mary's, Mississippi State a little bit. That second round matchup between Bama and St. Mary's potentially pretty opposite styles of play. That those are games that I feel like St. Mary's manages to win, over the course of the last handful of years. Those extreme differences in pace. So it'll be really interesting to see that matchup. And I'm going to be pretty big on the New Mexico upset, I think, the way that they're playing. Being able to run out Junior Joseph and Toppin together, against Hall and Scheifelen, I think that's a pretty good spot for New Mexico.
Yeah, I think, to me, Clemson kind of limped in there. But this region, to me, has the most clear upset potential. This is the one where brackets get busted on day 1 and 2. Like, it's going to come here from the West. Colgate versus Baylor. Like, Baylor coached well by Scott Drew, but would anybody be shocked if Colgate got hot and beat Baylor? Probably not. New Mexico, like you said, Nevada, Dayton, that's just could go either way. I think Long Beach State is a fun team. I would have preferred to see them play somebody else, but it is a good DFS environment there. Michigan State, Mississippi State, that almost feels like it should have been a play-in game to me. I feel like Michigan State's, there's going to be like no middle there. They're either just going to get ran out or they're going to win comfortably. I don't think it'll be close. I don't know. I have a weird feeling about that game. So Big 12 with 8, SEC with 8. No surprise there. First 4 out, Oklahoma, Seton Hall, Indiana State, and Pittsburgh. St. John's would have been the first 4 out to me, but okay. So Oklahoma was safely in. Lenardi had Oklahoma in. and he had Pittsburgh on the second line out. Virginia getting in as a net rank 54. I guess it's not so shocking to see Colorado and Boise State get in, but that Virginia one, that's going to be the committee's head is going to have to explain that one. We're going to have some decent options for the NIT. Now, the NIT made it to where teams that won their regular season conference but not the tournament no longer get auto bids, but we just saw Ole Miss and Chris Beard decline an NIT bid already, and we're going to see a bunch of that. So we may see the low to mid majors in the NIT anyways. Man, East just set the bar so high that it's really, really hard for me to get that excited. But the East by far the best to me, which is odd considering UConn is supposed to be the top overall 1 seed. And then that West region there, I think the most upset potential of all. I really like the different options there. And again, Indiana State is now the highest in the net ranking era, the highest net ranking, which was owned by NC State as the highest net to get left out. That is now a record held by Indiana State, highest net in history to be left out of the tournament. Clearly, we knew this was going to happen. The committee favors lackluster P5 teams over mid-majors. Such is life. Big East, story of the tournament, I think. Big East had a, arguably like one of the best conferences up there with the Big 12 and SEC. But Big East is like seeding-wise and matchup-wise, I feel like they might have got shafted a little bit. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely think they did. I think they're, such a strong conference that I'm just really shocked that would they get as many teams or less teams than the Pac-12 even? Less teams, right? Because we have Oregon, Colorado, Arizona, and Washington State. So
yeah,
it's a little shocking. I don't know, like it's definitely weird. The committee definitely favored, the Mountain West too. So it's not like they were screwing over a bunch of other mid majors to get power teams in. But I mean, I'm not feeling terrible for the teams that just missed out. Like, I know you're big for St. John's, and I mean, they would have been nice to have, but some of the other teams, pointed out today, I thought Oklahoma and Pittsburgh should be in consideration. I really didn't think they were strong enough. But yeah, I mean, it is still a surprise. I didn't really think Virginia was strong enough either. But track record, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like DFS wise, I don't want to see Virginia in anything because I don't want to have to worry about those games or think about them, I guess.
No, and a couple of tidbits here. 6 Mountain West teams into the tournament, 5 of them seeded multiple, so not just one lines, but multiple lines below where they were on the bracket matrix, and where majority of bracketologists, legitimate bracketologists, had them, such as Joe Lenardi. And the Big East set, so metrics wise, the Big East, a lot of people are reading those, interpreting them, looking at them. Second best conference in the country per certain metrics. 3 teams, all 3 of those bubble teams that could or may or may not get in, didn't get in. So it's crazy to see. Like, man, UConn's going to have to carry the torch. I think I'm not that high on Marquette. I know a lot of people are with Kolek playing, but bid stealers, obviously the most effective negatively by these bid stealers was the Big East. Absolutely destroyed. But I think had NC State not won the ACC, maybe, and based off what they're showing there, Seton Hall as the last 4 out, they would have gotten in before St. John's. So it looks like St. John's had no chance. It almost seems to me like St. John's had to not only get to the title game, but win and get the auto bid based off of that right there. I think Pittsburgh had no business getting in as far as them being a first 4 out. I think that's laughable. And then, like you said, Oklahoma, I just wasn't that impressed with Oklahoma either. I wouldn't have really been that excited for them to make it. Don't like using their team for DFS purposes, and they just didn't seem very good. And TCU basically getting in over Oklahoma. I thought that was like one of the coin flip areas, even though TCU safely got in. So TCU's non-conference strength of schedule 357. Joe Lunardi had said he had never seen a bubble team trying to squeak in, earn an at-large bid with a non-conference schedule as low as Pittsburgh's, which was 340th. But then TCU turns around and gets in with an SOS non-conference of 357. Yikes!
That's ridiculous.
That's tough. Yeah, looking at that stat, it's like, holy shit, that's crazy. Providence also, that was the other team that got left out. 6-9 versus quad 1, 3-4 versus quad 2, no quad 3 or 4 losses. FAU 2-2, 7-2. They had 2 quad 4 losses, and a safe 8 seed. Like, there's some explaining to be done here, and I think a lot of this is going to come down to like all the hidden secretive stuff with the net. Like, they just need to open that up and be like, here's what we're looking at, so that they don't get accused of, hey, were you favoring this team because of who they are and the name on the front of the jersey? What, like, I don't know. It's just, there's some things that I'm going to want to hear from the committee chair, but they're just going to give a same lame dunk. Like, we were set there on Friday and this team's metrics, we felt like they were really strong, and just like a bunch of nonsensical BS that doesn't answer any questions whatsoever. Virginia, like, to me, Virginia getting in is egregious. Like, the most egregious thing, there's a few teams that I thought should have got in. Yeah, St. John's. Okay, here. I want to hear this real quick, guys.
Felt like Iowa State was appropriately placed on that 2 seed line. In terms, we obviously had a lot of chaos in regards to what went on this weekend with conference tournament championships. We highlighted 4 conferences that had teams steal bids, if you will. Talk about the process of when that happens. What is the committee doing in terms of moving teams in and out, if you could? A very difficult process, Clark, and ironically, it wasn't 4 teams, it was 5, because the Mount West actually got a bid. That's right, in Mexico. Yep. Coming in. So when you start talking about the selections process, this is the first time since I've been on the committee that we've had 5 bids that have been stolen. Wow. The last 2 years combined has only been 3. So it makes it difficult for us to be able to go through that process. And as those bids,
5 bid stealers. He said in the last 2 years combined 3. That's nuts. That's nuts. They were destined to screw this up because of that, no matter what.
So we had to go back and start the process all over again. We did not finish our process of scrubbing until 2 a.m. this morning. So
oh my God. They were working on the bracket until 2 a.m. Damn, dude.
20 years, and they said this is probably the most difficult selection process that they've been a part of. Wow, thanks.
Well, I gotta say, you look great for a guy who didn't get any sleep, too. Really tough. So to me, Charles, then the story about Indiana State is not that they didn't get in, and obviously I know they're disappointed, their fans are disappointed. It seemed like everybody in America was rooting for them. But if things had gone the way they had in the past with respect to these bid thieves, you have Indiana State as the 3rd team out. So they would have been in the tournament, but for those late wins. Can you let us in on the conversation about the Sycamores and why they ended up really as close to being in the tournament as they did?
Again, they had a magnificent season. They had great metrics. But when you start to look at their non-conference and the games that they played outside of conference, that was something that we had to take a look at. Again, under normal circumstances with those additional bids, they would have been in. But as Clark said earlier, when you start splitting hairs, you have to look at something, you have to find something. And that's ultimately why they were not in the field. So was this difficult for you guys?
So Indiana State's strength of schedule is the reason why they were left out. That's such an easy cop-out answer for him.
Charles, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, so clearly there, Indiana State would have gotten in if there wasn't 5 bid stealers. We saw that with the last 4 out. Seton Hall, Oklahoma, and Pittsburgh. Like, in the committee's mind, if there was only 1 bid stealer, Pittsburgh would have gotten in before St. John. Seton Hall, Oklahoma, and Indiana State. Of those 4 teams, I would only really have cared or argued for Indiana State to get in. And he had mentioned splitting hairs there for the criteria. I get that. It makes sense. But leaning on the strength of schedule there, when you put other teams with worse non-conference strength of schedules in, is kind of what I expected type of answer there. So no surprise. Brett Belke in the house there. What's up, Brett? How can the top 4 seeds in the East that all won their conference tournaments all end up in the same region? How does the region of death, how does the top seed get the actual region of death? Like, I suspect that there was just so much chaos, and coming into this season, like it felt like, oh, all this portal business in the first month. Like we knew the season started off with JMU beating Michigan State, and a lot of us, myself included, I took a damn Final Four ticket out on Michigan State in the spring, literally like weeks after the tournament ended. Like we knew, okay, this is going to be the season of parity. This is going to be a true anybody can beat anybody scenario. And with that, the committee working till 2 a.m., to finish the bracket, like there was just bound to be some mistakes. They're never going to get it right 100% of the time. And that's just something that we have to deal with. And we get to argue about. We can sit here and say and be critical of them. I'm super critical of them. But if we were in that position, there would be obviously mistakes that happen there. But it is curious to see. Like it almost feels as though they made the bracket, like they're up late and they make this and they look at it and be like, damn, the number 1 overall seed got this. We should probably change that. And then they looked at the clock and said, no, fuck that. So that's kind of how I feel about that. Because, yeah, that really probably shouldn't have ended up the way it did. I think Connecticut has a nice little path there to the Sweet 16. Obviously, they're not going to lose to Stetson. I'm not really that concerned with FAU. This year, I think they actually will lose to Northwestern, truth be told. Maybe not because of their depth issues and injuries. But I think Connecticut has a nice little path to Sweet 16, but then it gets obviously very difficult because Auburn, UAB, San Diego State, those are all legitimate teams here. And then that bottom half with Iowa State, Illinois, Drake, there's some really good teams there. Just absolutely nuts. What are some other things, man? What are you looking at? It's like, who are a couple of players, maybe, just, putting you on the spot there that aren't the normal, media darlings that most people would know. Who are some of those lower major players that we can maybe look at for DFS prop betting, prize picks, opportunities that stick out? 1 or 2 that you're like really excited about.
I mean, with the big pace bump for St. Mary's in that matchup with Grand Canyon, like Marshalunas and Mahoney, like both those guards for St. Mary's are going to be really intrigue me in that game. I'm always looking for the pace up spots. And then if we can find them with guards that are strong, it's something that I'm going to try to take advantage of. My computer died here, so I can't really break down a ton of them. But my initial thought is I'm just trying to look and see which games are on Thursday to get ready for the king of the bracket. To get an idea of where I'm going to go. It seems like the Kentucky team total is probably going to be extremely high in that matchup with Oakland, and that's on Thursday. But yeah, obviously like New Mexico with the way they're playing, their guards can get hot at any point, and both big guys are double threats. So, a couple of teams closer to you than to me, but they're 2 teams that I like.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at the way that this is shaking out, like slate wise, it's going to be some solid. Oh, I love these all day slates, man. It's just so fun. Really, really interested and intrigued to see how you work out your mania stuff and head to heads. But yeah, looking at some potential players, and I'm going to be doing a piece for FTN that highlights overall, like what I think in no particular order, like the 25 best players to watch in the tournament, but looking at this initially for like non-household names and some people that are going to be really interesting for DFS purposes that we want to get to know and really check for, anything underpriced wise. There's a ton on Howard that we had mentioned, but really like McNeese State is the first one. Cause I think even though like diehards that follow the sport will know McNeese State, like, Will Wade, what they have. Shahada Wells should be a familiar name to most who play DFS because he did play a couple of seasons at TCU. And he had some big games on and off. He was an absolute star in the Southland, the conference player of the year, but he's not the only guy that they have. They have others like CJ Felder, who transferred from Florida and BC, Antavian Collin, also a very solid asset, Christian Schumate. There are some really good stacking opportunities there on that team. Johnny had mentioned that he will like picking Samford over Kansas. That's one that, might seem ludicrous initially, but we know how banged up Kansas is. No depth whatsoever. And this team here with Samford, they have been competitive for years. They do have Rylan Jones on the team. We know he, played at Utah State for a couple of seasons, has that P5 experience, but they have this kid, Ashore, who is just he's an Australian dude, and he is just an absolute sniper from long range, an elite rebounder, elite rim protection, and he draws a ton of fouls. He also has a high foul rate as well, but that's going to be a fun individual matchup for him to be playing and going up against a possibly one-shouldered Hunter Dickinson. So that's another player that I would definitely pay attention to and see what kind of pricing that we get out of there. And then the Long Beach State guys, like in years past, we've had some 15 and 14 seeds that even though their teams maybe got dominated, they still made value. Hartford, before they dropped D1 status a couple of years ago, 2 of their players actually ended up on the optimal in the tournament. I think a lot of people forget that. This Long Beach State team's playing well. They fire Dan Monson, but allow him to stay on as long as they last in the tournament. They're going after winning the Big West, and they have Marcus Tashonis, former Huskies and VCU player who's been absolutely nuts. Lucina Traore, who a lot of people got introduced to for the first time last night. He's phenomenal, great rebounder. Abaku Trahar, he's also an elite rebounder, both bang down low. They have Issa Silva, who's a former Stanford player. That's a possible mini stack there, depending on how the pricing comes up. Those players can be tricky because they have phenomenal rates. They have great stats, so DK and FanDuel may not be fooled there. They may price them at the 7K range, but if we get any of those type of players in that mid 6K range, or even, God forbid, in the mid 5Ks, those are just going to be really easy slams. And it's easy to maybe overlook players like that because let's say Long Beach State is, 18-point dogs or bigger. A lot of people would just look elsewhere, but that does not mean Long Beach State still wouldn't score 70 or 80 against Arizona. It just means Arizona probably going to score 100 plus, and we'll still walk away with 2 or 3 guys from the Long Beach State being profitable 4X plus performers. So I want to hit on that, and I'll be talking about that more throughout the week. And obviously you saw Grand Canyon. I was live tweeting that game last night up against St. Mary's. That's going to be fun. If we get the Grand Canyon, Alabama, you had mentioned Alabama, St. Mary's, a matchup looming. That's probably the most intriguing second round matchup for me between those 4 teams, because I wouldn't mind seeing Grand Canyon play Alabama. In fact, I'd love it. Wouldn't mind seeing them play Charleston, or if Charleston got by and played St. Mary's. I think all 4 of those teams are fun. All 4 of those teams have merit for DFS purposes. We have some experience with Charleston. They were on the slate recently with their, conference tournament run there in the Coastal. They play at the 59th fastest tempo. Alabama plays at one of the fastest tempo in the country. This is going to be one with a total sky high, and we'll see a lot of different players in use from that one. It's tricky, though, because Charleston has a deeper team, and it's a little bit harder on an individual basis, but they did give us Rain Smith at like 5'2", 5'3", last time Charleston was on the slate. If they do that again, he'll be one of the highest owned players on the slate because we saw how he can break a slate with his crazy high volume, high usage shooting. All right. Does Florida need the big who broke his leg? No. It's obviously tough not having Micah, but Alex Condon is a guy that I've been waiting to see more of. It has taken foul trouble to get him more minutes. We're also going to see more Thomas Howe, Denzel Aberdeen in a small ball lineup. So I don't think Florida is going to be put out too much without Micah. Obviously, losing a player like that, it definitely isn't good, but it's not going to put them in a spot where they can't compete. A lot of chatter about the various quad, resumes for teams that got left out. That's going to be a conversation that we have continually for the rest of this week. We're going to definitely have shows galore. So tomorrow night, I think they'll have the NIT play-in game slate. Tomorrow will act as a kind of bridge. So part of that show will be kind of first additional thoughts. Not, this is first thoughts, more time after being able to sleep on it, internalize it, think on the bracket a little bit longer. First half of tomorrow's show will be more talk about the tournament. Second half will be whatever NIT/play-in slate that they have. Then on Tuesday night, it'll be a full show talking about play-in and NIT slates. Wednesday night will be further in-depth over the entire first round, all million games. And then every day the night before, we'll be covering that slate. Of course, we'll be on every night this week except for Sunday night. So get used to seeing this face. And if Raz has some time, wants to pop on and hang out with us, you're obviously going to be welcome anytime, my man. You're kind of setting up to be my dynamic duo partner for this tournament run. So as long as you've got time, I know I go on late, so it's tough, but I appreciate you spending time with us, giving us your takes, and looking forward to seeing how you do in the Mania, and also if you can four-peat in the RotoWire tournament. I think the rest of us are just playing for second there, but we'll see.
Yeah, look forward to it. And probably plan out a couple nights where I might be able to join you. If I can plan it ahead of time, I might be able to make it work a little easier. It's going to be a busy few days getting ready for the bracket, and obviously the RotoWire draft on Tuesday. Just excited to, I guess, maybe get a regular night of sleep tonight before consuming, 4 cups of coffee a day for the next week.
Yeah, this is the night to do it. Definitely. There's going to be a ton of content coming up. There's going to be a ton of different appearances that I'm sure you're going to be making as well. And yeah, just articles, shows, everything galore. So this is the one and only time. The NIT selection show will be coming up here soon. We're going to sign out here. I appreciate Raz and everybody else who hung out with us. Stick around on the FTN Network, though. In just about 5 to 10 minutes, Mike Randall is going to jump on his betting show, give his initial reacts for the bracket and the reveal there. And then Mike Kutry and him will be doing a private show for the subs. Don't get any ideas, though. It's not that kind of private show. Appreciate everybody who continues to support the show. Before you head out of here, make sure you smash that like button. The engagements, likes, shares, comments, questions, concerns helps not only this show, but the overall FTN network itself. All about those engagements for the algorithm. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow night, right around 9 p.m. PST, talking more tournament, NIT action, play-in game, all that good stuff. Thanks, guys. Take care, and we'll see you next time.